For example, how do you determine if an idea is feasible or not? I'm not sure if you're referring to whether the government would have to look at your idea whether it's feasible or not to give you a grant, or you're just thinking aloud as whether it's feasible or not. So I'll just share what I think is feasible or not is that whether you're plugging the gaps currently that is needed in the market or not. The customers today actually would buy your product or services or not. That one you have to determine. You can do sample check, sample survey, but you have to do your own market research to determine whether your idea is feasible or not. And that's first. Secondly is that your idea, whether it's implementable or not on the ground. So for example, whether you need huge capital investments or is it labor intensive, and whether you can actually start off and be able to survive. So there's a cash flow issues that you have to do a certain forecast, and you have to also be able to look at whether when you get your first order, how long does it take, your product life cycle, some of these things you have to consider. Alright, so you have to look at all this when you can get a first dollar, and when do you think you can actually turn a profit. So it depends, really depends. And ideas are always good. You don't hesitate to try, like I keep saying, because there's, whether it's chicken rice, and one type of chicken rice, and another type of chicken rice, there's one successful one, the other one may not be successful. So I've seen businesses with the simplest idea, but they came out, they win on services, win on very sincerity and reliability, they can still find their own space in the market. So it's to find your own space, find your niche somewhere. You don't have to do something is totally out of this world, so much so that it looks totally different and all. You don't have to do that. As long as you can differentiate yourself in the market from the competitors, and you can be successful too. So that is where I think the ideas that we're looking for and that spark of genius or brilliance at. What are successful frameworks or revenue? I think touched on quite a bit that you started with social, but really I think the success because he had a product, he had something that customers wanted, and there's a demand out there. So firstly is that to build a social enterprise, we also have seed funding for social enterprise. That came from MCYS, Ministry of Community Development, Youth and Sports. They have seed funding for MCYS. And I think it's most important is that whether it's cooperative or social enterprise, it's called enterprise. It means that your product or services must sell. Alright, must be able to make enough money so that you can do and fulfill a social objective. So I believe a very practical reason is that you must fulfill some commercial viability targets and objectives first before thinking about fulfilling a social mission. So there is that part that you have to think through, that you must bring in the revenue dollar and also make a profit so that you can continue. What about grants for foreigners? I think I'll take care of Singaporeans first, right? But I would suggest that maybe foreigners find a Singapore partner. So there are many.
Can I just add one thing? I think Minister said something which was very important. An idea is an idea, but an idea cannot run away from certain basic business principles, especially for a startup. The most important thing for a startup to realize is cash flow implication. Because a startup really means to say that you do not have a developed revenue stream yet. You might have started out with a very small capital base. So be conservative, grow prudently. These are basics that one cannot run away. Cash flow is very, very important. And to be honest, today there are a lot of grant schemes out there. Most of them are on a reimbursement basis, which means it does not help your cash flow at all. You have to spend, then wait, make sure you put in your reports properly, and then probably you get the money in 2 weeks or 4 weeks' time. So that does not help an entrepreneur in terms of cash flow. It does help in terms of a total capital base, but it does not help the cash flow for a startup. So cash flow is so important. It's like the blood in the system. The blood has to move. Yeah.
Will that change from the government perspective? Will we change the grants right now?
Well, I'll listen to your first advice is that in order not to cultivate more grantopreneurs, right, grantopreneurs, then we should cut down on our grants. I think there's certain crutch mentality there, and I believe so because I recently met someone from UK that's also venturing in this area. He's a VC. He came over and I met him, and his view was that he was amazed by the number of grants that we actually have in Singapore. It was just like, wow, so many, but are they going to be just taking one grant from another grant from another grant, and end of the day, the business just don't run? That may happen. That may happen. So I would say that many helping hands are good, but you have to help yourself. We can only do so much, provide you the platforms, and hopefully we can still bring you to reality of what it is about. That's why it's important that for ACE, the movement that I chair for entrepreneurship, I'm going to shift the focus away from grant and provide platforms to help you open up businesses overseas and give you the networking locally too, to help you succeed, rather than bring focus onto the grants for you to start business. You start a business because you believe in an idea of yours, you believe in a product, we can help you to look at whether it's feasible, whether cash flow and all that can help you to mentor you through the process, and we need mentors like them to be able to help you as well. So that is the platform that I hope to create, and also to develop into an environment where the culture is to help you to be self-reliant and be independent. And that's more important than the grant itself. How to choose co-founders, I think we talked about that already. What do you feel about the rise of blog shops and those businesses that rent a little box to sell things? I think if there's a willing buyer and a willing seller, whatever form, shape or size that you come out and you're able to sell a product and generate revenue, and you're selling dollars, I think, if I understand you correctly, for me, I think it's not an issue. Unless you're doing something illegal, illegitimate, of course, then I would discourage that. But if not, in any form, shape, or size, can be mama shop again, can be setting up just a hawking store, but with license, please. And then I think you should just go ahead, because if there's a demand in the market, it's your opportunity.